In Jerusalem, nearly 3,000 years ago, a legendary king ruled with a wisdom that defied men and a harem that scandalized the heavens. A palace where exotic perfumes, mesmerizing dances, and mysterious rituals vied for space with political alliances and power games. But what if I told you that behind this splendor there were even darker secrets, that nights in the palace were not only about love, but about magic, and that the wisest man in history held sway over forces that no other dared to confront? Today, we will open the curtains of the temple and the palace to reveal the behind-the-scenes life of Solomon, the brilliance, the intrigues, and the mystical side of a king who, according to legends, commanded even supernatural entities with a simple wave of his hand. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to discover may forever change the way you see the most powerful king in the Bible, and perhaps even sacred history itself. Have you ever wondered what daily life was like inside that golden palace, erected by the wisest king in history? How did he reconcile the construction of a magnificent temple with the management of 700 royal wives and 300 concubines? Imagine the daily preparations of these women, the almost mystical rituals, the aromatic baths, the massages with myrrh and aloes, their hair braided with pure gold threads. The nights in Solomon's palace were not just encounters. They were ceremonies filled with exotic perfumes, mesmerizing dances, and the sparkle of hand-picked jewels to captivate the monarch. But the competition among these women went far beyond mere pleasure. It was a game of power, desire, and intrigue that shaped the destiny of a kingdom. And behind all this, an even darker secret awaited. A supernatural entity that Solomon, according to legends, kept under his control through the mystical power of his ring. Stay with us until the end, for this revelation may completely transform everything you have ever heard about the most powerful king in history. Imagine yourself transported to the year 957 before Christ. The rising sun of Jerusalem reveals a breathtaking sight. High on Mount Moriah, a monumental structure rises, its walls covered in pure gold, gleaming in the morning light like a celestial beacon. This was not merely a building, it was an unwavering symbol of faith and power, the spiritual heart of Israel. The construction of Solomon's temple is one of the greatest feats of engineering and faith. Built with resources equivalent to billions of dollars by today's standards, more than 180,000 workers dedicated 7 continuous years of effort to erect this marvel. Caravans brought cedar from Lebanon, the most precious wood in the ancient world, to the holy city. Phoenician artisans, considered the most skilled of their time, carved every detail with an almost divine precision. Hammers and chisels echoed day and night, shaping massive stone blocks with an ingenuity that still defies modern understanding. The dimensions of the temple were impressive. 30 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 15 meters high in the main sanctuary. But its interior was even more astonishing. The walls were entirely covered in gold, from floor to ceiling. There was no rest for the eyes, except in the constant shine of the sacred metal. Colossal cherubim, carved from olive wood and overlaid with gold, guarded the Holy of Holies with outstretched wings, creating an almost suffocating atmosphere of reverence and mystery. The courtyard of the priests was paved with precious stones, each with a distant origin and a unique history. 2 massive columns, Jachin and Boaz, marked the entrance, their capitals adorned with bronze pomegranates and intertwined chains, symbolizing the strength and stability of Solomon's kingdom. In the heart of the temple rested the Holy of Holies, a perfect cube of 10 meters on each side, housing the Ark of the Covenant. So sacred was this space that only the high priest could enter, and only once a year, on the Day of Atonement. The aroma of incense mingled with the scent of cedar, creating an unforgettable sensory experience, a tangible link between heaven and earth. To ensure the continuous functioning of this colossal spiritual center, Solomon implemented an innovative administrative system. 24 priestly divisions took turns, ensuring that the worship of the God of Israel never ceased. Each division had specific responsibilities, from maintaining the golden lamps to replacing the showbread, carefully renewed every Sabbath. At dawn, even before the sunlight touched the golden walls of the temple, a true symphony of sounds echoed through the sacred corridors. The resounding roar of the bronze gates opening marked the beginning of another day of intense activity. The Levites, organized into groups with specific tasks, began their service with an almost military discipline. The first order of the day was ritual purification, considered as sacred as the sacrifices themselves. Imagine hundreds of servants moving with absolute precision, some carrying golden pitchers full of water, others sweeping the courtyards with consecrated brooms. The marble floor was polished with such care that it was said one could see their soul reflected in it. The temple musicians, specially trained Levites, took their places in the courtyards. Their harps, cymbals, and trumpets filled the air with a celestial melody that could be heard beyond the walls of Jerusalem. Each hymn was selected based on instructions left by King David himself, designated for specific times of the day, elevating the souls of the faithful. In the outer courtyards, authorized merchants sold animals for sacrifice, but this was not an ordinary market. Each animal underwent a rigorous inspection by the priests to ensure that only those without blemish were offered to God. Prices were regulated so that even the poorest could participate in the sacred rituals, ensuring inclusion in worship. A complex system of aqueducts, a marvel of ancient engineering, provided a constant flow of water for all temple functions. Water was essential not only for cleaning, but also for purification rituals. The immense bronze sea, supported by 12 bronze oxen, stored the water necessary for the priests and their many daily tasks. Before any sacred service, the priests underwent a rigorous purification process. They dressed in fine linen garments, stored in special chambers, with each article of clothing carrying a deep symbolic meaning. The garments had to be put on in exact order, accompanied by specific prayers, aligning body and spirit with the divine purpose. Behind the scenes of the temple, a city within itself pulsed with constant activity. Dedicated bakers prepared the showbread in sacred ovens, following an ancestral recipe carefully preserved for generations. Perfumers worked with equal devotion, mixing the sacred incense, whose formula was kept as secret as the temple's own treasures. But this splendor and devotion were only one facet of Solomon's life. Prepare to discover how the wisest king of Israel also delved into much darker realms, where he allegedly commanded supernatural entities and where his palace kept seductive rituals and hidden practices far from the eyes of the people. The story of Solomon's harem is not just about pleasure, it is about power, influence, and the seeds of an empire's decline. Imagine a palace so vast that it could house 1,000 women, each with her own quarters, servants, and rituals. Solomon's harem was not merely a den of pleasure, it was a center of political power, where the fate of entire nations was decided. The 700 royal wives and 300 concubines formed a complex network of strategic alliances with distant kingdoms. The daughter of Pharaoh held the most prestigious position, living in an exclusive palace adorned with Egyptian hieroglyphs and furnished with the finest treasures of Egypt. Her retinue included hundreds of servants, musicians, and dancers from the Nile. Her garments were woven of linen so fine that it was said to be transparent as water. The princesses of Moab brought exotic fragrances and a deep knowledge of aromatics, while the women of Sidon were famous for their skill in weaving royal purple. Each people preserved their traditions, creating an unprecedented multicultural environment in the ancient world. The harem was like a miniature city, with its own intricate hierarchy. The royal wives lived on the upper levels in luxurious pavilions overlooking fragrant gardens. The concubines, though also surrounded by comfort, lived in the lower, less opulent quarters. Each woman held a royal seal, allowing her to conduct business and maintain correspondence with her homeland. Specially appointed scribes kept meticulous records: name, lineage, dowries received, gifts exchanged, and, most importantly, any child born from the union with the king. The administration of the harem was a complex mechanism worthy of an empire. A true army sustained life within Solomon's harem: administrators, guards, cooks, musicians, doctors, and midwives. Everything operated with precision, following strict rules. The routine was coordinated by special messengers, usually elderly and highly respected women, who managed communication between sectors. No wife could visit another without prior permission, a necessary measure to prevent intrigues, dangerous alliances, and silent conspiracies. The palace was a cauldron of ambition, beauty, and secrets. Each night, a woman was chosen for the king. The rituals for a night with Solomon began at dawn. The chosen woman was secretly announced by a messenger, initiating a meticulous process that lasted all day. First, she was taken to the House of Purifications, a building reserved solely for beautification rituals. There she bathed in 7 different pools, each infused with specific aromatic oils: myrrh, aloes, cassia, and cinnamon. 7 personal maids attended to every detail. Her hair was washed with rare essences and combed with ivory combs, adorned with precious stones. Her skin received a luxurious treatment made of honey, goat's milk, and secret oils, an ancient formula passed down through generations of harem guardians. Her nails were dyed with henna, forming symbolic designs that told love stories in an ancient script. The garments for the night were chosen with the utmost care, fabrics so fine they resembled spiderwebs, dyed with rare pigments extracted from shells and precious minerals. The jewels, more than simple adornments, carried symbolic meanings and a seductive power. The royal chamber was prepared with equal precision. Golden censers spread captivating fragrances. Flower petals were scattered over silk sheets, and small oil lamps cast a soft, seductive glow. Musicians, trained in love songs, discreetly positioned themselves in adjacent rooms, playing soft melodies inspired by the Song of Songs. Notes sweet as honey, filling the air with romance and mystery. The chosen woman was then instructed in the arts of love by experienced elders who passed down secrets kept for generations. Every gesture, every word, every movement was rehearsed to make the night unforgettable. These were the mistresses of seduction, the guardians of knowledge that transformed the physical encounter into a transcendent experience. The Song of Songs echoed through the palace corridors, a poem of love so intense that it was elevated to the Holy Scriptures. In it, Solomon revealed a vision of love that united the physical and the spiritual, a human passion celebrated as a reflection of divine love. The women in Solomon's harem came from distant lands, each bringing the sensual traditions of her own culture. The Egyptians, with their sinuous bodies, mastered the art of belly dancing, moving like snakes to the sound of golden sistrums. The Phoenicians, true alchemists of aromas, created perfumes capable of enchanting the senses. The Moabite women charmed with their love songs, soft melodies that melted even the hardest hearts. In the heart of the palace, secret gardens flourished among pomegranate trees and vineyards crossed by murmuring fountains. There, the women gathered not as rivals, but as students and mentors to share ancient secrets. Recipes with aromatic herbs, hypnotic dance movements, and the subtle charms of seductive conversation. Each culture brought its own vision of pleasure and beauty, enriching the tapestry of seduction that enveloped the king. Special musical instruments were reserved exclusively for the rituals of love: delicate harps with silk strings, drums that echoed like heartbeats, and flutes that sounded like passionate sighs. Music was considered a form of magic, a key capable of opening the doors of the heart. Never before in ancient history had a royal court witnessed such rivalry for the affection of a single man. Within that vast harem, each woman developed her own strategy to capture the king's eye and favor. Some stood out for their intelligence, discreetly joining discussions about politics and philosophy. Others cultivated artistic talents, composing poetry, creating exotic fragrances, or choreographing dances as captivating as enchantments. The competition was silent, but ruthless. Alliances formed between women of different nations, weaving webs of influence that extended far beyond the palace walls. An astute concubine could rise in status by aligning with powerful royal wives. Servants played crucial roles in this palatial chess game, carrying secret messages, observing movements in the corridors, and reporting everything back to their mistresses. A whisper at the right moment could change a favorite's destiny. Gifts carried hidden meanings, a cup of spiced wine, a poem inscribed on perfumed papyrus, a jewel marked with mysterious symbols. Everything was part of a secret language of power and seduction. The wisest women understood that true power resided not only in beauty, but in knowledge. They studied the king's preferences, his challenges in governance, his moods, and his habits. Some became informal advisors, influencing political decisions during intimate conversations, proving that intelligence could be as seductive as beauty. What you're about to discover about Solomon's children marks the beginning of the decline of the greatest kingdom Israel ever knew. It is a story shaped by love, power, and far-reaching consequences, events that altered the course of sacred history. Despite having 1,000 women, biblical records mention only one legitimate son who would succeed him, Rehoboam, born of Naamah, the Ammonite woman. However, scholars believe that dozens of princes and princesses were born in the royal harem. Each birth was more than a family event. It was a political move, sealing alliances with distant kingdoms and creating multiple lines of succession within the palace. Each royal child lived in his or her own isolated universe. They were educated by tutors from around the world who taught foreign languages, philosophy, and arts. Mothers fiercely competed for the best instructors, knowing that knowledge meant influence for their children in the future. Hebrew teachers ensured the preservation of the law of Moses, while foreign masters introduced myths and ideas from their native cultures. Rehoboam grew up caught between these two worlds, raised in the traditions of Israel, but surrounded by the exotic cultures of his foreign aunts and stepmothers. His upbringing was defined by contrasts that would later tragically shape his reign, leading to the division of the kingdom. The paternal figure was distant. Solomon, overwhelmed with affairs of state and the complexity of managing a harem of 1,000 women, delegated his children's education to their mothers and tutors. Each mother sought to mold her child in her own image, creating divisions, intrigues, and silent factions within the palace that undermined the unity of the kingdom from within. Over time, Solomon's harem became a spiritual battlefield. Each foreign wife brought not only her beauty and her diplomatic dowry, but also her gods. Pharaoh's daughter worshipped Isis and Osiris in chambers adorned with hieroglyphs. Sidonian women burned incense to Astarte on hidden altars. Moabite wives celebrated rituals to Chemosh under the moonlight. At first, Solomon tolerated these foreign cults as diplomatic gestures, but gradually, seduced by both love and curiosity, he began to participate in these rituals. He erected altars for foreign gods on the hills around Jerusalem, each more luxurious than the last. The spiritual impact was devastating. When the people saw their king worshipping other gods, they also began to stray from their ancestral faith. Prophets and priests cried out against this unfaithfulness, but their voices were drowned out by the sound of pagan drums and laughter echoing from the harem. In the heart of the kingdom, an invisible war was raging, a battle between loyalty to the God of Israel and the allure of foreign religions. Even with Yahweh's temple erected in majestic splendor in the center of Jerusalem, small pagan shrines sprang up like weeds in the palace gardens. The sacred aroma of the temple's incense now mingled with the profane fragrances of secret rituals. But it was not just a spiritual crisis, it was also an economic crisis. Maintaining 1,000 wives was not simply a matter of affection or desire, it was a monumental financial burden. Each wife demanded a lifestyle worthy of her position: servants, luxurious clothes, jewels, exotic food. The royal treasury, once overflowing with the riches of trade and tribute, began to dwindle to sustain the opulence of the court. Taxes were increased, forced labor was imposed to maintain the palaces and temples. The people, once proud of their wise king, now murmured in bitterness. The brilliance of gold was overshadowed by oppression. Solomon's reign, which had begun in wisdom and glory, was silently heading for ruin. As King Solomon grew old, the intrigues within the harem intensified. Younger wives fiercely competed for his attention, while older ones struggled to preserve their influence and status. Rumors of conspiracies whispered through the golden columns and perfumed halls of the palace. And it is at this point that Solomon's story intertwines with the legendary and the mystical. Ancient texts, many outside the biblical canon, such as the Testament of Solomon, mention a legendary artifact, Solomon's ring, a mystical piece engraved with the sacred name of God. According to these esoteric traditions, the king used this ring not only for his personal glory, but to command spirits and demons. Not for selfish purposes, but to accomplish great feats, such as the building of the temple and his palace. It is said that each colossal stone, each cedar beam from Lebanon, was moved by supernatural forces invoked under his command. Legends claim that demons themselves were forced to serve in his court, some as messengers who could traverse vast distances in an instant, others revealing the hidden secrets of creation, teaching the healing properties of plants, metals, and precious stones. The Testament of Solomon, for example, describes how the king interrogated these spirits, demanding their names, their functions, and their weaknesses. This knowledge, it is said, was compiled into mystical books, sought after by magicians and sages throughout the centuries, in search of the power contained in Solomon's words and symbols. However, even with all this spiritual authority, Solomon remained reverent before God. He knew that his command over invisible forces came solely from the Most High, and used this power not for personal glory, but to exalt the Creator of heaven and earth. This ring, therefore, was not merely a magical object. It was a symbol of his divinely granted authority over the spiritual realm, an authority that few kings before or after him possessed. This facet of Solomon's life reveals a side of the king that is often overlooked in the main biblical narrative. He was not only a wise ruler and builder, he was also a master of hidden secrets, a man who walked a fine line between the divine and the mystical, using powers that, in the hands of others, could have led to his own perdition. The story of Solomon, with its brilliance of wisdom, the luxury of his harem, and the mystery of his ring, is a testament to the complexity of power and temptation. It reminds us that even the wisest of men can be led astray, and that the greatest achievements can carry within them the seeds of their own ruin. We have reached the end of our exploration of Solomon's life, a king whose story is a paradox of wisdom and foolishness, of splendor and decline. We have seen the magnificence of the temple, a testament to his unparalleled devotion and wealth. We have understood the complexity and influence of his harem, a center of political power and intrigue, where each woman was a piece on the vast chessboard of royalty. And we have delved into the legends of his ring, an artifact of mystical power that, according to traditions, granted him dominion over the spiritual world. Solomon's life is a mirror reflecting the temptations inherent in absolute power. His wisdom was legendary, but his weakness for foreign women and their gods led him to a spiritual fall that fragmented his kingdom and obscured his legacy. The story teaches us that even with access to unimaginable riches, divine wisdom, and even supernatural powers, Faithfulness to God remains the true measure of a lasting reign. If this deep analysis of Solomon and his mysteries has opened your eyes to new perspectives or sparked your curiosity, leave your thoughts and questions in the comments below. We want to continue this fascinating conversation with you. If this video has added value and made you think differently, please click the like button. This immensely helps us bring biblical and historical knowledge to a larger audience. And of course, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you do not miss our next studies, where we will continue to unveil the hidden truths in the scriptures and ancient stories. Remember, the scriptures do not hide the truth. They reveal it to those who are willing to dig deeper and see beyond the obvious. May God bless you abundantly, and we will see you soon in the next unveiling.